All right, welcome everybody. This is episode 6 of the Complete Strength podcast. And today we have a very special guest. The one and only legendary Becca McConville is here with us. And if you guys follow on the Complete Strength Facebook page, Becca and I did a couple different like Q&A videos. We did Facebook Live videos talking about nutrition and stuff. So hopefully you got to know Becca a little bit that way. But Becca is our registered dietitian. I say our, she is a registered dietitian, and who we like to partner with here at Complete Strength so we can call her our registered dietitian that way too. So hey, Becca.
Hello.
Anything you wanted to introduce yourself. I think we'll just kind of jump right into it, but just thinking about how did you get started in your field and kind of what does it look like for you?
Yeah, I kind of take the journey less followed and kind of went all around. So actually my first degree was in biology when I was playing basketball at a smaller college. And then about my junior year, I had this epiphany like, I wonder if I start looking at what I'm eating, will that impact my performance? And then actually just kind of stumbled across nutrition. You didn't really get anything provided education-wise, and thought that I could use my biology degree and kind of go on from there and, do work with nutrition. And then I found out, no, you have to go get a second degree. And so I kind of sat with it for a while and thought, do I really want to have to go back to school? But it was one of those things I was so passionate about that I thought it's worth it. So I went back to UCM and got my second degree in dietetics, and then ended up, kind of stringing along, had some jobs in between there, and then went and did my master's and internship at KU. Always had that passion, interest in sports nutrition, but it's one of those things that's really hard to just jump into unless you're coming from a college sports nutrition role. So I just waited for opportunities. I would work with friends' sons or daughters that were in like high school sports, and then worked at UMKC. They were starting a sports med department. I remember approaching being like, oh, now's my opportunity. Like, would you guys ever have a dietitian? I already work within the Truman, complex. Could you guys have me there? And they're like, well, we just started, so I don't think we're ready for that. I'm like, dang it. So I leave Truman, actually start at a rural hospital where I could create kind of whatever program. I was the only dietitian that was there. And then lo and behold, this was about 3 years later. Now they were ready to look for a sports dietitian because they had partnered with UMKC. And I was like, oh yeah, I want the opportunity. So started with just simply a couple presentations to the coaches, and then it evolved into actually working more with the athletes. And that's kind of got my toe in the door. And then just kind of started sending emails out to whoever would be interested in having a dietitian and why that was important. And that's where I ended up partnering with Summit Volleyball, which is how I met you. And actually I've been with them now for 6 or 7 years, right when they first started. And then just slowly built my way up and phased out of the hospital role. And then was blessed to work with the Chiefs for 3 years, which kind of put that on a bigger radar, and then built into private practice along the way, learning the ropes of how maybe traditionally we're taught in dietetics, like dieting and focus on food is not always the most productive way to teach people nutrition. And so really kind of came with that anti-diet lens, and it works for both. It works for not only athlete, but also works for people that are trying to combat emotional eating or intuitive eating or even eating disorders themselves. Whew. So see, it's quite a journey.
That's quite a journey.
I'm sure I missed quite a bit.
I don't think so. What did it look like for like with the Chiefs and like with UMKC on the athlete side particularly? What does that, or maybe briefly, what does that look like, or what did you?
So it's quite an array. So some of it may just be like for freshmen coming in high school, learning how to navigate the cafeteria and navigate their busy schedules, because a lot of times their practices are right smack at a mealtime. So how do they learn to get their fueling needs met, but also get to practice, then rush off to class? Then as they get older, it may be learn how to cook on their own. And again, when they start traveling on the road, the being able to have groceries that they order from Walmart or Hy-Vee and pick up. So a lot of it's life skills, but then also blending in if they're injured, what food can they use to help with healing? As they're building up their endurance to start a sport, what can they do to maximize that? So keeping it rather simple. And then it was ironic as I worked with the Chiefs, we forget that a lot of these athletes have had everything handed to them in college. So then when they're rookies, they don't know how to grocery shop. So I did grocery store tours with some of them. They don't know how to cook. So teaching them or showing them YouTube videos. And then again, maximizing how they can prevent injuries. Because for them, the more that they can stay healthy, that's more contracts, more millions.
That literally is their
more
livelihood.
zeros.
Yeah, more zeros.
More zeros. Yeah. We don't have that problem, but they do.
Nobody really cares if I'm healthy or not at work. Yeah.
Well, your wife does.
Sydney cares. Yeah, because then she would have to do all the work.
Exactly.
She wouldn't like that. What are some of, you mentioned a couple of them, but maybe briefly some of your primary areas of interest in, because like you said, you were interested in nutrition when you started out, but it's very broad.
Yes.
It's very wide, but you have I think now I would say you've grown into a
specialty role.
More specialties, but maybe just along the way or some of the primary areas that really interest you in the field of nutrition, dietetics.
So a big one is energy balance. So athletes kind of always, and not just athletes, everybody wants to kind of toe that line to figure out where their body can be at a quote unquote healthy weight and how much food they need to do to get there. And so a lot of times they miss the mark and then they end up in energy imbalance. And that's when we start seeing health consequences. So they flipped from the term female athlete triad to now relative energy deficit in sport. So it actually includes the males because we know that's a big group that suffers with that as well. And so passionate about it that I actually hope to have my book published by 2019. The editor is red marking it right now. So, I mean...
You wrote a book? Are you writing a book?
Well, I wrote it now. It's at the editor right now. It's going to be like an airplane read. So it'll be short and sweet. Cool. But it's just to explain how simple we can throw ourselves out of energy balance and how simple we can put ourselves in and what are some things to look for to know when you're maybe missing the mark. Because a lot of it's when we get in the grind of season or here we're approaching holiday season and you get so hectic and busy that you're like, oh, I didn't even realize how cruddy I felt, or, I didn't realize that I've been cutting my snacks out and oops, that ends up adding up over time. So along that lines, that's where I actually then became specialized in athletes with eating disorders, because sometimes it could be a disorder themselves that's causing that, and being able to guide them back to sport or being able to let them engage in sport in a healthy way so they can do what they love.
Yeah. If we could, we can get in. Let's talk a little more about eating disorders and disordered eating. I saw a post that you shared a while back that really resonated with me because in the fitness community, it was about meal prepping and how that can become, I'll let you talk about it, but how it can essentially become a disordered type of eating because we get so specific and so strung out about it and we get so intense and it can become really negative, have some really negative effects with that. But I think like how prevalent, generally speaking, or any type of statistics are disorders, either eating disorders or disordered eating in male and female athletes. 'Cause I definitely think we talked about that, I think a little bit about on the male side. And I know that's something that doesn't get addressed very much in media or in any type of environment of like it does with the female athletes. But
so unfortunately it's pretty prevalent, especially in sports that it can hide well, like endurance sports. I've seen statistics that say anywhere from like 65% of endurance athletes probably have some sort of disordered eating disorder. And the difference in that is really sometimes disordered eating can just be lack of education, where eating disorder is usually a psychological component to it, that they're using it for very rigid kind of OCD. They have to have it for that safety and support or perfectionism. And so again, you think of the personalities that would gravitate towards sports and what kind of sport it is. So of course, if they're number driven, they're going to go with something that's more number driven sport like running or something like triathlons. And so they get kind of caught up in that cobweb. I think we've done a huge injustice looking at the power sports, meaning football, wrestling, because we're now understanding that males are just as much at risk, but they are not going to come forward because we put a lot of our literature in the feminine pronoun. And so if they're going to go and pull eating disorder knowledge and it says she and her, they're going to put it right back. So we're working, Patrick Devney and I have presented several times kind of talking about that and trying to get more neutral literature and also do a better job of screening. So he came forward. He was a quarterback at Colorado and then was at Seattle Seahawks. Joey Julius, that did kind of make the mainstream on CNN with, great, Pitt State or Pennsylvania State. It's one of the P schools. That's horrible. Okay. And then Mike Marjama, who retired from the Mariners, Major League Baseball. These are three really well-known males that have come forward that said, like, yeah, I struggled with an eating disorder. And we really have to do a better job of breaking the stigma and allowing more males to come forward. And it's hard because I'm a vocal female, but again, I'm a female that's talking about it. We need more males that can step forward.
I see it. I can see it makes sense looking at football, wrestling, maybe like boxing and some of those that are real weight driven. Mm-hmm. Those sports are very weight driven. In football, you have to maintain your weight at a certain level.
Right.
Like linemen can't get down, offensive linemen can't get down in the NFL to like 250 pounds, which might be a healthier weight for them with their 6'5" frame, because then they're going to get pushed around and they're going to lose their job and they're not going to be effective in the game that they're playing. There's like wrestlers and boxers and those things that have weight limits and classes that they have to stay in. And
so we're just assuming that they can do that without having torment and disorder to maintain it. And then I found in my time in college athletics and the NFL that, I mean, they're doing some pretty risky behaviors and a lot of them are feeling miserable doing it and they hate to ask for help because they don't want the stigma that's around that. Or, after their sport, what's happened to their bodies. If we have pushed linemen to play at 50 pounds above where their weight wants to be, well, now they're going to be at a higher weight because we've pushed their set point weight up. Yeah. So,
and I know that's hard to, from what I've even seen personally, it's hard to come out of training, playing, competing, maintaining that weight, having that, like the energy balance you're talking about of being able to have enough calories, have enough fuel. Well, then you stop playing your sport and you stop doing all that activity and you keep eating the same way because that's what you're used to and those are your habits and that's your schedule. And then we know that can turn into just all kinds of problems from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's actually one of the largest growing groups of admissions to eating disorder facilities because they don't have a coach that's giving them structure anymore, whether it's in practice or a strength coach. They don't have an athletic trainer they're doing physical screenings every year. Yeah. And so they really don't have any eyes on them and they just kind of go, I don't want to say AWOL, but if they're used to 3 hours in the gym, they think that that's what they still need to do, even when they're trying to do a full-time job. And it just kind of gets the best of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That kind of, I touched on a little bit. What about what do you see in the fitness community about the prevalence there? That's kind of what I talk about with the meal prep idea.
So, I don't want to demonize the fitness industry because I think a lot of people have good intentions when they get started there, but we have to look at the cultures within gyms. So that's one of the reasons why I love you guys so much, because it's about strength. It's about improving fitness outcomes, not about weight markers or body fat or, Fitspo. I always had to laugh so much at the Fitspiration. Like you can't see fitness by how you look, right?
Right.
But if that gym breeds that culture, then those individuals start comparing and then they feel like they need to look like that person on the treadmill next to them, or they've let their trainer down if they can't reach these goals that they want to. And so really trying to shift where they're looking at persons holistically, making sure they don't have eating disorders. So, I've had clients that have been medically compromised and not supposed to be exercising, but they're sneaking to the gym and spending 2-3 hours. Well, it's like 7-Eleven. Somebody's always in the gym getting on a fitness machine. And so they blend in and nobody notices, like, oh my gosh, they're still on there.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. So probably more prevalent than we think,
mhm.
and more of the undiagnosed or unrecognized probably variety
Yeah.
that way.
And even dietitians and those that are in the fitness industry, you're more at risk to have disordered eating because you're taking, or body dysmorphia or body image, I should say, because you're nonstop putting that in front of your face, which is easy to have comparisons, or I call it health narcissism, where you kind of feel the superiority or feel like you have to so that you are important.
Yeah. What about any advice for just specifically with those disorders? Any advice regarding that, like maybe how to recognize it or how to deal with it?
So screen your strength coach, your personal trainer, your dietitian. Ask them some questions to see if you can get a good feel if they are anti-diet or if they are anti-number focused. And then make sure that you're finding somebody that you feel comfortable with that's going to listen to you and not tell you what to do. And if you're coming in and you're feeling horrible, you haven't slept, you haven't eaten. So that's one thing I like that you guys do. You always check in with your athletes before and be like, hey, did you have lunch today? Did you have a snack? If not, you need to eat something before you
Yeah.
work out.
Or that changes what we're going to do for that day.
Exactly. Those are really important things that then you can be like, something's up right now, or like, hey, are you still seeing your dietitian, your therapist? Maybe you should go check in with them. I mean, I've had trainers that have referred back that have been like, yeah, I'm noticing that their workouts aren't very strong. I don't think they're getting enough fueling in. And so, yeah, kind of catch them before they relapse or get into more trouble.
So if they think if someone maybe if they feel like maybe there's an issue or they think they have something going on, check with your coaches, therapists, dietitians,
Absolutely.
etc., and just to see like kind of what their philosophy is, to see if there's something. Now, are you thinking to see if it's something on their end that they are not doing properly or offering you properly, or just to see, meaning like, are they focused more on the diet as opposed to performance or results,
So kind of,
screening them that way
yes.
to see
So
if
kind of
they are on the
both.
right track to
Yeah.
be able to take care of you?
And my good buddy Amanda Tierney, she is an exercise physiologist. She actually has a program called Discovering Balance, and it's meant for fitness professionals to learn more how to identify, how to incorporate that into their practice for those clients that want that approach. So I do feel like a lot are trying to be protective. They just don't know. I mean, that's the way that a dietitian was taught. That's the way a lot of personal trainers and strength coaches have been taught. So we just we need to shift in the culture.
That's good. That's a good point. That goes right into, now I wanted to talk about going from eating disorders and disordered eating to just back to the fitness industry, which is obviously I don't really I don't really want to be labeled a part of the fitness industry a lot of times, but that's where we are. Complete Strength is in the quote unquote fitness industry. But maybe some of these thoughts they might be pretty broad, generic, but some of the direct links between nutrition and fitness, some of the things we've talked about, mostly like in the energy balance stuff. But what are some of the other direct links between just nutrition or the nutrition industry or overall nutrition with fitness in our industry? Kind of
So
like how important is it, or where does it link up?
so I break it down like when I work with an athlete, like what is their ultimate goal? Because fitness, like we joked about with Fitspiration, it could be completely different for what they're aiming for. If it's
Sure.
strength, that's going to look different than endurance. Or if it's preventing chronic disease, they have arthritis and they're just wanting to get more flexible. So it could be that they're just trying to maximize their capacity throughout a whole season, like training periodization, how you match nutrition with that. It could be that they are wanting to make changes with body composition because they're a wrestler and they have to actually make a weight class. How can you manage that year round? I love to talk about recovery nutrition because I think that's the key that helps them the grind in season, be able to turn it around every day and improve. And then if they've been injured, like how can they get back to their sport healthy and as fast as possible? And then just kind of looking long term, like make it doable. I mean, a lot of times that's where we talked about the meal prepping, is that we have to prepare, right? We have to go get our groceries. And sometimes just being able to have food prepped ahead of time is not disordered. But
Correct.
if it's diet driven and if it's for the purpose of restricting your calories, like having, I love where everybody has their meal prep pictures and it's chicken breast, broccoli, and brown rice. I'm like, oh, that's original.
Yeah. And then it's like, that's where you get
7
into it.
days
It's
a
like
week.
4 stalks of broccoli. It's like only 4, not 5. And it's 3
Exactly.
carrots with this meal, little mini carrots, not 5 mini carrots. It has to be 3. That's where we can get into that really
Absolutely.
dangerous.
And then,
disorder.
by the 5th day, they got to be sick of eating it. And then you've got to think about that whole satisfaction piece, which is part of nutrition, is nourishment, are then they going to be craving something at the end of the day because they've, eaten cardboard all day. And then that's what leads them to overeating at night or binge eating.
True. Do you see this? Maybe we'll see how this goes, but do you see positive? I'm just trying to think of like, what are some of positive, or what are things that the fitness community is doing maybe correctly in terms of advice or information of how we, aside from the general chicken breasts and brown rice and broccoli for 6 meals a day, every 3 hours, 7 days a week. Like that's kind of one of the norms kind of in the bodybuilding type culture, in the fitness or the figure competitor culture. But what are some of the positives that you see?
I do think that the messaging is getting better about like letting fuel work for you. So I love that quote where it says, and this doesn't have to be just athletes, but it's athletes fuel and train. They don't diet and exercise. So it's thinking like, let's maximize the amount of fuel. And you'll see some people are like, wow, I can maintain my weight on 2,500 calories as a female. Well, females need to hear that.
Yeah.
We don't need to be 1,200 calories and then trying to spend 2 hours in the gym strength training and doing HIIT workouts and thinking that you're going to maximize your body's strength and ability to recover. So I think that they have done a better job there. And I think too, like, trying to incorporate them back into preparing foods at home. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with fast food, but I think we've complicated cooking in the kitchen way too much, where you can throw things in a crock pot, come home at the end of the day and have a nice balanced meal, and it doesn't have to take any more than 5 minutes.
That's a really good point. Complicated cooking. That's a good point. Yeah, I don't think about that. Think about, we don't have time to
we don't
cook
have any
and
designer
prepare
meals at our house, but they taste good.
Yeah. It doesn't have to take an hour to prepare dinner.
Right.
With all the fancy things. I was just thinking about what you said on the calorie amount and stuff. What would be some of your advice? And this is where I'd really like to bring you in to do some type of, like we talked about a seminar or a class or something, a big group with a lot of our women in particular. But what's that piece of advice for the women who, how do I say, are restricting calories for whatever reason, thinking like maybe they saw or heard somewhere that 1,000, 1,200 calories, or maybe that's what their fitness app tells them, or a book they're reading about weight loss or whatever. It's like, what's the advice that you would give to especially the women who are not necessarily athletes or performance driven, that are just restricting calories to try and work on their figure, lose some weight?
Sure.
And
so that's why I say in my book, calories are really
good plug.
Like that. Shameless.
Good plug. Well, you have to check out my book to get that answer.
No, I'm gonna tell them what's in there.
Okay.
We are using calories off so much guesstimation. So like MyFitnessPal, right? It's guesstimating how many calories you need.
Totally. Like
the database, people can enter in whatever foods they want, and that's what you're guessing you have on your food. Same thing with your Fitbits and the machines. I think I saw at one point there was anywhere from a 35 to 45% error rate with what your elliptical is telling you that you burn.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but I don't like playing the odds that I could be 45% off.
Yeah.
Where if we can stay kind of connected with what our bodies are telling us, it likes to stay in energy balance. So that's where I do a lot of work, like defining hunger scales, fullness scales, sleep, energy level, what's normal, what's being really apathetic and tired, and other kind of markers of health as well. Because you think about it, I always say we can't see what's going on within our body. So we have the liver, the heart, the brain, digestion, the immune system. I could keep going and
There you go.
going, that are all asking for energy at any given time, and we have no idea. So we don't want to miss the mark and then put ourselves on a really low calorie diet. And then all of a sudden the body's like, hey, I don't have fuel. I better start slowing things down. And then their metabolism's really sluggish. And that's why they can't lose weight, even though they're on a 1,200 calorie diet. But just like a furnace or a fire, we can actually put more fuel in there and get the metabolism going. And they can actually have better body composition, have better fitness outcomes on a higher amount of fuel.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to eat, right?
Yeah. Maybe just quickly, why is that so difficult for us to hear and comprehend? And I'm not to pick on women here, but it's, from my experience here over the past decade, women have a harder time coming to grips with it's okay to eat more food.
Well,
Most men don't have any problem eating as much food as they want. It's just
fear that it'll turn to weight gain, which sometimes it can at first, but that's because the thermostat isn't picked up in the body. The metabolism hasn't taken off. Yeah. The other thing too is if, good old Dr. Google, if they go to type in, what is a 55-year-old female's energy needs, they're probably going to pull up 1,200 calories because guess what? Diet is the most searched thing that's on the internet. So of course that's going to be the thing that pops up to the top. So then that helps kind of reassure them like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't be bumping up my calories because Google told me I needed 1,200 calorie. And then all the apps are driven for weight loss. So you can see where we've kind of set up the scenario for them to question if we're accurate or not.
Yeah, that's tough stuff. I don't want to get like too negative, but what are some of, or maybe we touched on a lot of these, what are some of the negative pieces of information and advice, if we haven't talked about them already, in the fitness community as a whole? Because I feel like there is, like what John and I talked about when we did his on PT, similar with in the fitness and training world, like there's so much information out there. And when we talked about almost everybody has an Instagram page where they're an expert and they got their videos they're throwing out there and they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, and all of a sudden now they become an expert.
Right.
So we go to them to be like, well, they must be doing something really well. They must know what they're talking about because they have a bunch of followers.
Exactly.
And
Dangerous.
Yeah. What are some of the negative or some of the maybe not so well thought out pieces of advice or information in the fitness community especially?
Sure. So you'll see like on the flyer that's here, I start out with saying like, would you take a medication that the physician tells you is going to have a 95% chance of being ineffective? None of us would feel it, right? But that's what diets do. And that's what's sometimes pushed in the fitness industry is like, go on this diet. I mean, we've evolved from paleo to keto to macros. They're all diets. And everybody's going to say, well, I lost weight on it. Yeah, I believe it. But show me the 2-year mark. Because what happens is, going back to energy balance, and this doesn't even have to be for athletes, the body loves to stay in equilibrium. So it doesn't matter what weight you're at, the body wants to stay there. And so it's going to fight if you do an extreme restriction to get back there. So that's where the hunger hormones get increased. That's where all of a sudden they're feeling fatigue, there's sleep disruption. But you can do it in a more gentle manner intuitively and figure out where your body wants to be at the lower end naturally without having to do a diet to get there. So I think that's one of the things. And then some of the harmful messaging where we've kind of turned moral judgment on food, like clean eating,
right? Or,
I don't want to put judgment, but like we see the argument between like vegetarians and those that eat beef. When that crosses the line,
and we categorize a lot of food. It's like kind of like a class
bad
system
food,
of
good food,
these
healthy,
are bad,
unhealthy.
these are really bad, these are not so bad, these are okay.
Schools have no
good,
place.
really
That's
good.
a whole nother podcast. Invoking nutrition messages to children. You would be amazed at how many kids that I see that pick that up from watching a documentary in 4th grade or in PE class, because then they start to feel when we have something that's labeled as unhealthy, I'm a bad person, or they go to shame, and that never leads into positive results. That usually leads into some sort of unhealthy mechanism, whether it's, excessive exercise to try to burn off that unhealthy food, or eating disorder, restriction, or binge eating. It's not good.
So what would be your advice to combat that, or to say like, how do we get away from our class system of good foods, bad foods, really bad foods, really good foods, or maybe even specifically that, but maybe even it's vegetarian is the way to go. No, eating meat that's from the earth. That's the way to go. Well, no, just all grains is the way to go. Like,
Right.
what's the advice and how do we
Well,
how do we combat or how do we balance all that out?
the definition of nutrition is to have a balance of foods that nourish you, not only physically, but emotionally and your brain as well. So if you listen to your brain and body, I often joke, I love cupcakes, right? So if I was to have a cupcake, the same cupcake every single day, I'm going to get sick of it and my body's going to get sick of it and not want it anymore. But we have to trust that that intuition will be there to say, like, I'd rather have a salad instead, or I would rather have a steak. You'll hear people talk about when they start craving iron, or excuse me, I just gave it away. When they start craving steak, it's usually because they're iron deficient.
Okay.
Like the body has the wisdom to tell you what it needs. We just get so many external messages that block that. And I think that's where we're missing the mark. You see, I worked in school food service for a little bit in between school. And it was amazing how kids will come up, they'll eat their chicken nuggets, but they'll also come back and get seconds on fruit cocktail. They'll leave half their roll. If we leave them alone and let them learn to choose foods and what feels good and what tastes good, guess what? They'll make balanced choices. We're the ones that start breaking that apart by putting our judgments on that, and then we've disconnected them from what their bodies tell them.
That's good. That's good advice there because we really want to try to start with kids and try to start helping them make their own choices so they will make better choices. And hopefully it doesn't turn into, as an adult or later on, into these disorders and just.
And I joke, we don't eat nutrients, we eat foods. So I've had clients that will, oh, here's my beans for my protein, here's my oatmeal for my carbohydrates, and then I've got my carrots and ranch, and that is what their dinner looks like.
Yeah.
So that's a macro plate right there. And I'm like,
that's disgusting. That sounds
like,
terrible.
let's have a food that is satisfactory, that tastes good, that makes you excited to eat it. And guess what? Then you're going to be done with it. So you're not going to be thinking about what you want for the next day because you're going to go on and watch a TV show or you're going to go and hang out with your friends.
Yeah. Okay, we're running out of time with Becca here. But this has been really good, though, so far.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I like to talk about nutrition.
Like that's great. And so I want to touch on for our people, for our listeners, we're slowly trying to roll it out to everybody here, like in the gym with our clients. But we wanted to. I've been trying to, at least in my head anyway. I probably haven't voiced it very often. I'm trying to partner with Becca to really get some nutrition and on whatever that looks like for our clients here, because we are ones that don't want to say. We have people ask all the time, and like we've been talking about a lot of times, you'll find personal trainers, not necessarily a bad thing, that will give nutrition with their programs and with their plans as well. That's something from pretty much the beginning. We dabble in some of it here and there in the beginning, but I've kind of taken a stand over that's not in our realm of practice. That's not in our education, in our knowledge. We don't really study enough anyway to try to, so we give basic elementary guidelines. So I really wanted to incorporate a dietitian to offer some type of nutrition. So I think what we've started with now, I think will be really good. So here's our plug. Everybody go buy Becca's book. What's the book called?
Finding your sweet spot, being able to assess energy balance and prevent energy deficiency.
That's a lot. Finding your sweet spot.
Finding your sweet spot.
Okay.
In sport.
But we have Becca she does consultations, and so we're offering that here for our complete strength people. We're going to do either it can be part of your training package or just on top of what you're doing as kind of a secondary thing, but that will give our people the ability to book consultation with Becca. And maybe what does that, maybe tell them kind of what does that look like real quick of when we do the consultation with you, what does that entail? And
so one, just like I talked about earlier, I always want to know what your goals are that you're hoping to obtain. And we kind of set that at the top. And then I really try to go through a pretty thorough run through of medications, your sleep habits, stress level, activity level, how much time do you have to prepare meals? Do you want to cook? Those types of things. And then we go from there and see what we can formulate to meet your goals. And then, of course, if I feel like there's anything that you're reporting that sounds like nutritional deficiencies, we go food first. Then we may talk about if we need to follow up and get labs or do any kind of supplementation.
Cool. Good. So that's what, for our complete strength people, we're going to offer that now. So we're trying to get that information out. And this was one of the ways I really wanted to help kind of get that information out, let people hear from you directly and kind of what your thoughts on it.
I'm excited for this partnership.
What we can do with it, because we want people, nutrition is, there's a lot of people that say like in the training world, it's like 90% nutrition and 10%, where I think that's a little skewed.
Right.
It's a little more 50-50 really and realistically, but it's a very important part of it. It's not like 2% nutrition of what you're putting in your body, and then 98% is how much work you do in the gym. It's a much stronger percentage than that. But so it's very important to have both, and we want to make sure we are offering the best that we can for our people. So that's where it comes in.
I agree.
That's why you're here. Well, how about real quick before you got to go, your podcast and other ways people can connect with you, social media, otherwise.
Sure. So I have a podcast as well called Fit for a Queen, and it's a play on words, PHIT, and it's designed for the female athlete trying to balance performance, health, intellect, and time for self. But even then, athlete is such a global term that it could be for anybody. We have a lot of mental health. We've been able to interview some of the iconic athletes like Catherine Schweitzer. I'm trying to get Alec Kiefer on really bad. Sydney Spencer, Marlboro. And then other things like just sports nutrition 101 with Nancy Clark, or other things like organizations that are out there that kind of teach empowering women, like Girls on the Run. We interviewed, as well as Hollaback, which is about kind of street harassment and safety with women when they're out being active. So a lot of fun. As you can tell, you have a podcast too. It is a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. We're just getting into ours. You've been doing yours for quite a while now.
Yeah, so a little bit over a year. Yeah. So, and it's on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes. And then you can find my website at www.beccamcconville, which is BECCAMCCONVILLE.com. Whew. My maiden name was Kirk. That would have been a lot easier. And then from there you can click to like my Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and all that and find resources. I do have a great grocery store sheet that's on there that you can use and print out. It's an Excel spreadsheet that you can get for free.
And I'll try to, maybe we could even put something on our website too. We haven't talked about that. We could put links, or maybe if you wanted to even throw up like a little bio or picture or something, we could probably do that too.
No, thank you.
Nothing. Okay, great. Awesome. Never mind. So we'll scratch that out. Just kidding. Cool. Thanks, Becca. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Fun. And I am going to, so now, as you all know, we wrap up our show with our 2-minute drill, which is random. You don't have to, this isn't for you.
I'm like, what? We're doing drills? I didn't wear the right shoes.
That's great. Yeah. When the 2-minute drill is just my little random time to just spew out whatever's on my mind. Starting my 2-minute drill here. I'm going to start the clock. We'll just get right into it. This really ties into what we were just talking about with Becca. The idea that we get into in our society, a lot of these 2-minute drills that you guys are hearing me do, that if you're still listening at this point, which I think most of you are, because we have some pretty avid fans of the Complete Strength podcast. And a lot of these 2-minute drills is just me just kind of, I feel like I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, like I said, and stuff that just comes to my mind. But a lot of it is I want to try to encourage and uplift and build people up, which is what we want to do here at Complete Strength as a whole. That's why we started this gym, and that's what we strive to do with all of our clients. And I think this is just another way to do that. And in the terms of fitness, nutrition, training, body image, I would really love to see us stop with the comparisons and with, I want to look like this guy, I want to look like this girl, I want to have the body that she has, I want to have this guy's physique. I want to be strong like this guy. I want to be fast like that girl. I want all these things, all these comparisons. Some of those are good to try and strive for, but I think overall they can become really detrimental to who we are as individuals. And what makes us special is the fact that we're an individual, and everybody, we are all created individually and specifically and in an important way. And so when we're comparing constantly to others, and when we try to strive to be like them, that takes away a lot of our self-identity and the special things that make us us. So that's in my 2 minute, I got 10 seconds left. That is the 2-minute drill for this episode. Just focus on what makes you you and enjoy that and hold on to that. And let's stop trying to always compare or be like other people. That's all the time I have for my 2-minute drill. That goes really quick. Wrapping up episode 6 of the Complete Strength Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week with episode 7, and look for us here, as you know, but we're on Apple Podcasts and Podbean and Google Play Music, as well as Spotify. And subscribe to us there. Look for these updates. And as always, if any time you think of questions or comments or thoughts that you'd like to be addressed on the show or would like for us to discuss, put that on our Facebook page or on Instagram when we post these. And you could always email me, or email info@complete-strength.com. And we'd love to try and do a little more Q&A and get some specific information out there. So let us know if there's anything that we can talk about, and we'd love to discuss it. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.